YouTubers always talk about the best vlogging cameras, but unfortunately the best vlogging cameras are not always the best one for B-roll as well. So here we'll find out what the differences are and what options you have for good B-roll cameras. You enjoying the Fuji, Robbie?
Not bad. I like my old 6400 though, I think. Joking.
Yeah. I would say it's a little bit better. So the most important spec for a good B-roll camera for me is to have some sort of internal stabilization. It could be sensor stabilization, IBIS. It's usually the best because it doesn't lower your quality, but also digital stabilization in cameras like the Canon EOS R M6 Mark II, for example, works pretty well. And the reason is that allows you to get B-roll shots straight out of your hands without any issues. For B-roll, you just want to have movement in your shot, and for that you just need a stabilized camera, otherwise it's unwatchable. The next point is that you want to have at least decent 1080p, but even better 4K footage, because 4K allows you to crop in. You can also crop in a bit with 1080p, people usually don't notice that, but 4K is even better because then you can crop in even more. That means you can animate in post, you can reframe your shots, etc. So if you didn't get it right directly, then it doesn't matter so much. You can still do a lot in post to rescue your footage. But what's even more important for me regarding quality of my footage is that I have high bit rates, and if somehow possible 10-bit, and even better 4:2, because that means that you get 4 times the colors when you have 10-bit. And then if you color grade your footage, you don't get banding in the skies, you don't get weird artifacts in the shadows, etc. So it just looks so much cleaner and better, your image. And even if you expose that after that on YouTube, the quality is not the same anymore as on your computer, but it also looks a lot better as if you would color grade 8-bit footage and then upload that to YouTube. So these are like really the most important specs for me for B-roll footage. Then there's also one spec that is just not as important for B-roll footage as it is for vlogging, and that's autofocus. Like, I shot for about 3 years on Panasonic cameras, first the G85 and then the GH5, and both of those cameras suck for autofocus. It's really like you always have to put it in manual mode, and then you press the AF on button so that it focuses one time on your subject and then the focus stays where it is. That's how you use this camera, and that works really good for B-roll. Like 95 of my B-roll shots today, I absolutely no problem to do like that, so I don't really need good autofocus on a camera for B-roll. But when I vlog like I'm doing right now, then I really prefer to have good autofocus, because I can just get in front of the camera, it tracks my face, and I don't have to worry about that my focus is correct. But on B-roll, I'm behind the camera, I can pull the focus wheel manually, as you see in the clip here right now that Robbie shot of me before, and it just looks good, and you don't really have to do anything. Of course, also for B-roll, it is usually a bit better to have a bit better autofocus, because then you can do tracking shots, maybe if a person moves or so. But even there, I can still pull the focus manually by turning the wheel, so I don't really need the best autofocus there. And that's actually what I hear all the time from people about the Fujifilm X-T4, for example. The autofocus is not as good as from Sony or Canon, for example, but it's absolutely usable. So overall, when I'm looking for a camera mostly for B-roll, then the autofocus is more secondary, even if it's not completely unimportant. Smoke down there looks amazing. I liked it. Here was even a small, or there is actually still a small cloud ocean around there. North of Thailand rocks. Love it here. You usually don't think about Thailand like that. You usually think about beaches, etc. But Thailand has a lot more to offer. It's great. So now we know all the specs that are important for B-roll cameras, but what about vlogging cameras? Why are they different now? Now, the most important thing for vlogging cameras is actually the lens. Like, I love to have super wide angle zoom lenses for vlogging, like the Tamron 17 to 28 millimeters here, but also 15 to 35 millimeter on Canon RF, for example, because that gives you a wide angle to vlog. So then it's a lot easier because you're not that close to your camera. And you also can zoom in if you want to get some quick shots around you, and you still have a nice shallow depth of field. Like you can see here, the background is blurred out because it's an f2.8, etc. So that's great. But on a vlogging camera, you don't really need high frame rates, for example, like 60 FPS, 120 FPS, etc. You don't need that for a vlogging camera, and that's why usually vlogging cameras, people don't think so much about higher frame rates, etc. They only think about the sensor size, having a full frame sensor so that you have super wide angle lenses available. So a good example is the Sony a7C. You have a flip screen, you have 4K up to 30 FPS, you have full frame lenses available. So it's actually a very good camera for vlogging, but for B-roll it's not really the best. It only has 100 Mbits in MPEG-4, not even HEVC footage. So for color grading, that's really not the best, even if the results don't look bad, to be honest. So that's why I would not really consider buying a Sony a7C for B-roll. And for me also, like a video camera that I want to use for vlogging should also be able to shoot decent B-roll, at least, because it's all the time switching between vlogging shots and B-roll shots. So the ideal camera is actually for me the Sony a7S III, because there I can vlog and I can shoot quality B-roll at the same time. So that really helps a lot. I'm hiding from you, bro. How are you doing?
Trying to warm up. It's cold up here.
Yeah. No, okay, I was like moving all the time, so it's not that cold for me.
It's like 12 degrees up here.
Hey, you got some more shots?
I got lots of shots.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. Show me some.
I don't know how to play.
Display back. Okay, and now you have to press down to play.
Okay.
Actually says that on the display.
Yeah, I don't know though.
It's awesome to have someone that can film you. Just makes YouTube so much more fun. So there was a nice sunrise up here. I would say let's go for some coffee down in the village, and then we can talk about actual cameras that you should consider for B-roll. So let's talk about specific camera recommendations, and the first one here, when you're under $1,000 or at $1,000, then I recommend the Panasonic G85 or a used Panasonic GH5 and G9. You sometimes can already get them for less than $1,000 or at around the $1,000 areas, and these are really good cameras for shooting B-roll, because especially the GH5, it has 4K 60, it has 10-bit footage, etc. Like that is a really nice camera. The autofocus totally sucks in that camera, but I was shooting on Panasonic cameras for 3 years and I always found a way to make it work. Like you have a smartphone app where you can lock it on your face even if you want to shoot videos of yourself and not only B-roll. So that camera does a really good job. And then there is a new camera from Fujifilm, the XS10, and that's a really nice one. It's like a small version from the Fujifilm X-T4. You have stabilization in there, you have not 10-bit color as far as I know, but you have 1080p with up to 240 frames per second. I wouldn't recommend that, but 120 frames per second looks pretty good. And you also have this nice picture profiles, or as it's called, film simulations from Fujifilm, and they are so good that your footage really looks absolutely usable straight out of camera. You usually have to add a bit more contrast, maybe work a bit on the saturation, but that's also, in this camera you actually don't need 10 bits so much because the color straight out of camera are already so good. And when we go one step further to about $2,000, actually a bit less, then I would say the Fujifilm X-T4 beats every other camera for B-roll shooting, and you can also vlog with it and shoot yourself with some wide angle lenses. For B-roll shooting, this is really the best camera. It has 4K 60 in 10-bit, you have 1080p up to 240 FPS, again also shoot only up to 120 there, but you have a really nice quality there, and I really love the Fujifilm film simulation. So it's pretty similar to the XS1, but you have 4K 60 and 10-bit footage, so even better, especially for professional work. And then when we're looking into the higher spec area where you spend a lot more money actually, then you have cameras like the Canon EOS R6, the R5, Sony a7S III. The Canon Canon EOS R5 and R6 cameras, they have the problem with overheating, so it works for most of you guys. If you only shoot normal B-roll, then it's on and off shooting, so you won't get any overheating issues there. But the moment when you do client work, for example, you have to shoot longer interviews, etc., then it can happen that you get these overheating issues, and that's why I decided against Canon. I just want to be 100% sure that the camera always works, and that's why I decided to get the Sony a7S III, and this camera can really do everything. It's great for B-roll, it's great for vlogging, as you see right now I'm vlogging on it, so that camera is really the camera that can do it all. Just it's not that good for photography, and there's the little advantage from the Fujifilm X-T4 actually, because the X-T4 has more megapixels, so it's a lot better for photo shooting as well if you want to do really everything with this camera. So kind of the Fujifilm X-T4 and the a7S III, these are both cameras that can do pretty much everything you want to do with the camera. Not just video, but also photo for the Fujifilm, and yeah, that makes both of those cameras, in my opinion, the best cameras for B-roll shooting and also vlogging if you want to. What you also need to consider is lenses, like especially the Canon cameras. The lens options are pretty expensive if you want to get the native RF lenses. Can adapt the EF lenses, but that makes your camera and setup pretty heavy, so I don't really like that. I'm not a fan of that, and I would rather get the RF lenses, but they are very expensive. And for a Fujifilm, also for the a7S III with the Tamron lenses, the lenses are a lot more affordable. Also in the lower specs, like Panasonic GH5 for example, the Micro Four Thirds system, there you have lots of very affordable lenses. So that's also something to think about when you buy into a system. Always consider the lens options you have. So one more important thing to consider about B-roll is that the most important thing is that you have B-roll in your shots, because it's an enhancement of your A-roll. So even if your B-roll is not perfect, don't get discouraged. Use it. If your camera doesn't have internal stabilization, then maybe buy a gimbal or something like that. You don't necessarily need to buy a new camera instantly. Just the most important thing is that you have B-roll to enhance your A-roll. So I hope this video was helpful to decide if you want to buy a camera that is better for B-roll. If yes, then please leave me a thumbs up, and also don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell notifications button for upcoming videos. See you in the next one.